Tell me your name and your title.
Jared Hudson. I'm a candidate for the U.S. Senate seat.
Okay. Why run for Senate?
That's a great question. I ask myself that every day. Why even get involved in politics? But the position of U.S. Senator, as I've really learned over the past couple of months as I've been looking at this, it's a force multiplier. Now, I come from the SEAL teams. I'm a former SEAL, and a force multiplier in a gunfight is a machine gun, right? It turns one guy into the equivalent of four guys. And that position of U.S. Senator is a force multiplier, but it's a force multiplier for good or it's a force multiplier for bad. And with three young girls at home, with a family that I love dearly, and obviously loving the state of Alabama and this nation, I know that I can sit in that seat and make it a force multiplier for good. I'm not sure about all of the politically ambitious people who just like climbing the ladder, and it seems like they're there for their own ambition and self-elevation. So that's why I run for Senate, is because it is a force multiplier, and I intend to use it for good.
All right. And what really gets you? What bugs you? And what do you want to change if you go to Washington?
Oh, wow, yeah. So probably the biggest thing that bugs me is symbolism without substance. We get it so much in politics. You have individuals that will tell you one thing and then they go and do another. Now, I'm a Christian man, so I just want to preface that with saying this, because everybody during political season in Alabama is a Christian. I believe Jesus came to this world, lived a perfect life, died and rose again on the third day for my sins and yours, and it's through him we're set free. That's what I mean when I say I'm a Christian. As a Christian man, I believe what Paul said, how will they hear if there's not a preacher to preach? You've got to say the words. But then we also see in James that you're going to see my faith in Jesus Christ through my actions. And oftentimes in the political world, we don't see that. You hear a lot of talk, but you see no real action. And that is probably what gets me the most, especially being a guy who was a SEAL, fought for this country, went overseas, lost buddies for this country, working as a law enforcement officer here, being the CEO of a small business. I think it's important for your actions to match your words. And that's probably the thing that bothers me the most with politics.
Okay, so the Covenant Rescue Group, tell me what you do there.
I'm the CEO of Covenant Rescue Group. We're a nonprofit. We got our 501c3 status in 2019. 2018, my wife and I decided to start it. And 2019, we got that status from the IRS. We started raising money, and we basically train local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, primarily here stateside. We do work overseas some, but we primarily have what we call a CONUS, Continental U.S. Focus, to target human trafficking, in particular child exploitation. So we work with a local agency. We teach them how to target individuals who are buying or selling kids, and then we run a live operation with that agency so they can make successful arrests and prosecutions.
Yeah. Tell me what your thoughts are on immigration right now. Is that part of the problem with some of this trafficking?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So since Trump has been in, border crossings, illegal border crossings have gone down tremendously, right? But with the illegal immigration problem, and even when they moved it to a port of entry and they would call it legal immigration, they weren't running biometrics on kids that appeared to be under 18. So you would have folks cross the border and they would cross with 3 or 4 kids that might not be their own, and they're not in the system. So anytime you have a child that nobody knows about that's here, they run the risk of being trafficked or abused. And so it has increased the problem of human trafficking, but is it the only problem with human trafficking? No. This existed before the open border. It's just the open border made it a little bit worse.
I love the story that you told Sean Ryan on
Yes,
the
ma'am.
podcast,
Yeah.
and why you wanted to be a Navy SEAL in the first place.
Well, originally, I didn't want to be a SEAL. When I graduated high school, I went to fire college and became a firefighter. And I went on a mission trip with my church, Gardendale First Baptist Church, just up the road from where we're sitting at right now. I went on a mission trip and saw some stuff overseas that in Africa, we were in sub-Saharan Africa, saw some stuff overseas that really bothered me, that I wanted to do something about, and I couldn't do anything about it. We're on a mission trip with a church, right? And so I came home and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I want to make a difference, and that was the Lord moving me toward military service. The reason I chose SEALs is at the time there were special operations contracts, And the hardest contract to obtain was the SEAL contract. So I started there, and I was like, I'm going to start with this one. And if I pass this test, then that's what the Lord has for me. If I don't, I'll move to the next one, which was actually Air Force PJ. The one after that was the Army Ranger, or I believe it was an X-ray contract for Green Berets. And the final one was the Marine Recon contract. So I passed the SEAL contract, and that's the direction I went.
Okay. I mean, you have this thing in you that you want to protect and
Oh,
serve.
absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I mean, the biggest thing is service. And I would say that's the biggest thing with the position of U.S. Senator. We talked about how it's a force multiplier for good or bad. The purpose of any of these elected officials is to serve the people that they've been elected to represent. So for a U.S. Senator, we look and we say, wow, that's a U.S. Senator. They're top of the food chain, right? They're the top of the hierarchy. That's not true. The command structure is we the people. The citizen of the state of Alabama, that is the top of the chain. That is the top of the command chain. As a U.S. Senator, I'm elected to uphold the U.S. citizens' God-given rights that are outlined in the Constitution. So it is truly service that drives the desire for that, but really the desire for anything else that I've done.
Mm-hmm. Did how we got out of Afghanistan break your heart?
I mean, yes. So I actually was a part of a lot of the withdrawal efforts, getting people out, was able to go to Tajikistan, ran a cover. We got people across the border in the Badakhshan corridor. I think total we got 3,100 people out through the corridors that me and the team that I brought over opened up. When we were there, we got 75 people, which was 5 families total, out through those borders with a couple of ministries and some U.S. government help, because a lot of people within the bureaucracy were upset at the withdrawal, kind of like what you're talking about. It bothered a lot of folks, and so they were actively working to get some of our partners, missionaries, people that were at risk out of that country before the Taliban ultimately took it over. So I say all that to say, yes, it really bothered me to see how that withdrawal happened, because it didn't have to happen that way. And that's probably the biggest issue. It could have been done differently.
Yeah, strength and funding the military. What are your thoughts on Iran, Israel, Russia, Ukraine right now?
Oh yeah, so that's to talk about all that would take more than we have time to talk about. But let's go to Iran, Israel first, right? So the Iranians, they're Persians, and anybody who knows anything about the Middle East would tell you the Persians elevate themselves over everybody else in the Middle East. It doesn't matter if it's Arabs or Semitic people or whatever. So the Persians, the Iranians, in particular the Ayatollah, want to be the keepers of Islam, right? They're the keepers of the faith. And then you've got the Saudis that are a little looser. They're Arabs, but they want to also be the keepers of the faith. So you've got that war kind of going on internally within the Muslim world. Then obviously you've got the Muslim-Jewish issue with Israel, right? So when you've got the Iranians that are developing nuclear weapons, and you've got Israel who's over there, and they're already at war with Israel, the other problem is they're just as likely to shoot any of our other partners in the Middle East, the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Turks, or they're all pretty co-located together. It's not like it's, we think of the United States of America, we think coast to coast. No, the Tehran to Tel Aviv is only about the distance from here to El Paso, Texas. So it's pretty close as far as how far apart they are, and everybody else is in between. So I say all that to say it's more than just Iran, Israel. It's Iran and everybody else that's over there. The last thing I'll leave you with, a little bit less than 100 million people in Iran, like 75% of them don't even want the regime that's in power. They're regular folks. They don't view themselves as better than the rest of the world. They just want to live their life, raise their kids, and be left alone. So, that's 75 million people who are just folks that want to live their life like normal. And then there's 25%, or about 25 million people, a little bit less than that, that want to take over that area of the Middle East. So.
And Russia, Ukraine, is this thing going to wrap up anytime soon?
I would hope it would. I do believe under President Trump we have the best chance of it actually wrapping up. I have a lot of buddies that have fought alongside Ukrainians over in the trenches, and one of the big things everybody say, oh, we're at the time now where it's just push button, to fight a war. No, war is always men killing other men. It always is. And the Ukrainian male populace, especially for my age or even younger than my age, has been absolutely decimated. They're drafting men in their 50s now, which is unheard of. The Ukrainian male populace has been decimated. Something's got to happen. Something's got to give soon, because Ukraine can't last much longer. So I would hope that it will end soon. I think we have a better chance with President Trump in there than with anybody else, because there is peace through strength, just like what happened with Iran. I believe that he shows a level of strength that can bring peace, but it does take time.
Are tariffs working?
Wow, that's a great question. Are tariffs working? I believe they are. Tariffs don't impact my business or what we do as much, but I have buddies in the agriculture industry that tariffs do impact, and they'll tell me, they're like, man, this is hard, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's just what they've said. The purpose for tariffs is short-term, bringing the business back to the United States of America that's been outsourced, but the goal has to be long-term deregulation so that we can have a free and fair market, because that's what everybody wants. We want a free and fair market. Right now, the market is not free and fair because we're strapped, our American businesses are strapped by the regulation that the government places upon them. So what happens? Well, we're going to outsource it to China. We're going to outsource it to Indonesia. We're going to outsource it to these other places that don't have those same regulations. Tariffs is a short-term answer to a long-term problem, and I believe with what we've seen the administration moving for, hey, we've got these tariffs in place to bring business back. Once we bring business back here, the government has to cut the ties, cut the red tape, lift their finger off the scale so that we can have a free and fair market for us, the people of the United States of America.
If you go to Washington, how will you help the state of Alabama?
Now, that is a really good question. And as an Alabamian, of course I love Alabama. Everybody laughs and says, yeah, we're from the South, and what goes along with that? You know, hey, you're just some rednecks from Alabama, roll tide, right? That's what they say, or War Eagle. So you know your football coaches and that's it. We have rocket scientists in Huntsville. I mean, you want to talk about brilliant people. We've got rocket scientists in Huntsville. We got people building ships down in Mobile, our seafaring stuff, working with the military, national security, and everything else in between. We have manufacturing all across the state. That's actually the highest, the number one income bringer into our GDP, right? So I think about $41 billion of our GDP, which is about $250 billion, comes from manufacturing. That's huge. We're a state that brings a lot to this nation. And as a state that brings a lot to this nation, we not only have to increase our ability to manufacture, I think Coach Tuberville might have talked about it recently in an article, but the economic revitalization, using some of these older factories, some of this older industrial area properties to bring in manufacturing hubs and build up there. That also works for conservation and the agriculture side, which is another huge aspect. Now, on the agriculture side, we're in the top 5 across the board when it comes to, say, peanut farming, catfish farming of all things, timber production. We're in the top 5 nationally. So we are producing a lot of stuff that impacts our nation and elevates our nation in a positive way. As a U.S. Senator, when I become a U.S. Senator, my goal will be to go to Washington and make sure that we don't just hold on to what we have, but we continue to elevate it so that our state elevates this nation. But more importantly, as a U.S. Senator, I elevate the people of Alabama. I go to Washington, D.C. to bring your issues to D.C., not the D.C. issues back to Alabama.
That was great. Is there something else that you want to include?
As far as economic growth in Alabama, I do want to mention this. As far as economic growth in Alabama, one of the biggest things is education in schools. I believe school choice is key. I don't think the federal government should be involved in telling Alabamians what we teach our kids. I believe that Alabama knows what we need to teach our kids best, and more importantly, the parents. And that's what I love about this state, and I'll continue to push for that, the removal of federal government from training our kids and allowing parents to decide, as Alabama has said, parents should be able to decide what we teach our kids. The only thing the government should be there for is making sure that kids are getting their education and not abused, not telling kids what they should be educated in. So I would say the education piece is big for me, because if we're educated, we grow economically. Our GDP grows, our ability to produce grows, our ability to elevate our nation grows. So that'd be the only other thing I'd add.